Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have John Goodwin with us today here to tell us about his pod and everything he's been doing HR related. Yeah, John opened more than 200 COVID testing sites in just under 4 weeks. So that's pretty interesting. He's a family guy living in a small city. And yeah, John, welcome to the pod. I'm happy to have you on. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Charles. I appreciate you having me on. Um, I like you said, probably my biggest accomplishment to date is during COVID. It was a challenging time. It was different regulations changing all the time, and a lot of need. And I was the chief people officer for a company called COVID Clinic. COVID Clinic was founded by a a gentleman, a doctor named Matt Avenante, and he actually, I don't know if you remember at the beginning of COVID, but Sean Penn was giving out a bunch of testing and starting a bunch of free testing and all that, and he's the guy that actually trained Sean Penn and Sean Penn's foundation to do that, and so he opened COVID Clinic. It was a nonprofit, and we just kind of went into underserved areas and tested. So real interesting, fun, but busy time.
Right. And how did you manage to do that? Because 204 weeks, that must be, yeah, ludicrous mode if you have multiple employees to manage in all of these testing centers. So, one, how did you do it? And two, how did you maintain your sanity in the process?
Yeah, for sure. So one, how I did it was I relied on my team. I had a real trustworthy and talented team behind me. And two, I don't know that I did maintain my sanity, just to be honest with you. I think I lost it a little bit there for a little while anyway, because
for 4 weeks.
Yeah, for about 4 or 5 weeks. So, yeah, so it was just a constant barrage of we need to hire these clinical folks, these folks who are licensed to do these things, because only very certain people could do these things. People who had their license were RNs, EMTs, things like that. And so we couldn't just hire anybody off the street. We had to be very specific. So we partnered with local colleges. We partnered with local hospitals, other local nonprofits who did other things, and we brought these folks in, and yeah, we were able to open those sites in Wisconsin in less than 4 weeks. So pretty interesting, pretty fun stuff.
Right. And you mentioned on your LinkedIn burnout bullshit, how to handle both, like and you having no filter, which is quite rare in the HR industry. What are you seeing in the market right now that yeah, humans are just not dealing with and totally ignoring, but something that should be talked about?
I think the thing that I'm focusing on at the moment is really the pushback on DEI. And diversity, equity, and inclusion. I really feel like we've lost our footing in that area. I think that we were making some great strides. I think we were making really good gains into being much more equitable and inclusive. But the political climate has changed in that way, and now it seems that to say equity or diversity is maybe a curse word. It's really the pushback has been amazing and really negative, and that has surprised me. So.
Right. And how should we fix that? Because I mean, diversity is important, right? Like ultimately it can lead to performance.
That's
if we
right.
don't get on the woke side of things, right? So it's just, I don't know, finding a different keyword or engaging the conversation from a different angle. How do you see that?
The thing is that I sort of don't prescribe to the whole woke idea. I don't prescribe to the fact that, I mean, there's a lot of people who use that as a negative word. And for me, it's more about just the evolution of time and the environment. We need to be inclusive. We need to, like you said, diversity creates it's creativity. It's imagination. It's where the ideas come from. Trust me, I'm not going to come up with every idea. Charles, I don't think you're going to come up with every idea. And having that diversity in the room and being equitable about sharing that space is important. Not just because we should do it as people, as Americans, as the human race, but because it does create that creativity, and it's what helps you grow. So
I think, like entrepreneurs and CEOs like me, I mean, we're quite cutthroat about it, because most of us were like, hey, we did it all by ourselves, and we achieved this all by ourselves coming here. But one, that is not fully true, right? Like, I think I've been privileged in so many ways in this life, but we also like sort of are anti DEI woke, because we just understand that the AI market, the AI revolution that's happening right now is being very cutthroat. And if people want like more social support, I don't think they'll just make it. I think the market is so intense right now that one of the last thing people need is like, oh, poor little you, let's grab my hand and I'll just give you a boost, like, well, to succeed in this market nowadays, especially as a founder and a CEO, it can take you like 5-10 years, and you sort of need to feel the pain. That doesn't mean that I don't encourage these people, right? And I don't want to give them a shot. Arguably, I did so for a great deal of my career. I hired a bunch of people, but I think, yeah, I'm still down to help them, have them on this podcast, give them mentorship for sure. I just think that at some point, like over helping someone and, like too much government and social intervention can actually not give them a shot in this future. What do you think about this?
I actually agree with you on that. And my argument to that would be that DEI isn't about giving them a free shot. DEI is about making sure they have the same shot. Right. It's about making sure that me being a white gentleman in my middle 40s, I have a general shot. I have a good shot at certain things, and someone who has my same skill set is generally the same as me, but doesn't look the same as me, doesn't have the same background as me. They have the same shot as I do in that room. They can say the same things, and there's no backlash. There's no looking, look sideways, anything like that, because it's important. Like, just because someone looks a certain way doesn't mean anything, because they come from a certain background doesn't mean anything. They've worked hard. I have hired probably 10,000 people in my career. And at no point, any time in my career, I can tell you honestly, has their appearance come into play. It's always been their background. It's always been their experience. It's always been our conversations. You and I having a conversation right here is pretty free flowing. If we have that same conversation in an interview type environment, that's great. And that's how I gauge things like that. But if we go into a interview and somebody's stumbling over their words, it doesn't matter what they look like. They're not, if they don't have the experience, they're stumbling. They can't answer the question. They're not going to get that job. It has no, there's no relation to what they look like. And so my argument to that is nobody is asking you to, or anyone, not just you, but anyone, to give somebody a free shot based on, their appearance. They're just saying, hey, when you see this person, give them the same shot as the other guy that looks like you.
Right. Yeah, I fully agree with that. Not sure if it came natural to me because of my generation, or maybe because that I value like no bullshit and purely performance and results, right? Because I never really looked at how people look. I had all kinds of people in my organizations, and I purely looked at their brains, and how they were thinking. They were team players and so forth.
Right.
Yeah. Do you feel that AI will slash a bunch of jobs also in the next coming years?
I do. Yeah. AI is going to take a lot, especially entry-level jobs. Entry-level jobs going to being impacted pretty significantly. I mean, I myself have AI doing pretty routine, monotonous tasks, things that I would rather not do, frankly, because it's a waste of my time. And that's, we pay people now to do that. And what would be the argument against not paying people and having AI do that? I think the only argument is it goes back to that social argument that you were talking about. And while I fully understand having a sort of a social safety net, I don't think that belongs here, unfortunately.
Right. And it's going to take more jobs than it's going to create. Is that your thesis?
I hope not. I hope that it leads to job creation. I hope that it creates different jobs, things that we don't even have right now. That's my hope. That doesn't look to be the trajectory that we're on. It looks like, at least in the short term, and short term being 5 to 10 years, that it's going to probably eliminate more jobs than it's going to create, unfortunately. But I do think that as AI advances, and AI creates things that we can't even think about. I mean, quantum computing's a thing now. You put that in the mix with AI, put them together. What's that create? I mean, that environment's crazy. I mean, I have no idea what jobs could come out of something like that. So.
You also run a podcast, right? Like, tell me a bit more about that idea, the thesis behind it, and what you've got out of it so far.
Sure. Yeah. So it's just started. I think I've only recorded maybe 2 episodes. So, but the idea behind it is exactly like my LinkedIn page says. It's just no bullshit. I have no tolerance for the bullshit anymore. I've got no time for it, and there's too much of it. Too often in my career have I been tasked with filling people a line, just giving them a line and letting them know, this is the way it's going to be, but then not being transparent with them about why, not telling them the whole story. And obviously, like, the whole story doesn't always need to be told. And so that's fine. But I believe in transparency as transparency is appropriate, and sharing with them. So at the end of the day, and what's it going to hurt? I mean, give a layoff scenario as an example. Why would we not be transparent with someone if we're laying them off, if they're losing their job? Why would we not tell them the truth? Why would we not, why? Because we don't want to hurt their feelings? I mean, their feelings are hurt. They're losing their job. It doesn't matter about their feelings at this point. Be honest with them. If it was performance-based, we should have told them that weeks ago. They should know it's performance-based. If it's not performance-based, tell them why. Is there financial impact on the organization? Has their job become redundant in some way? I mean, be honest with them, because honesty, it's going to piss people off, but at the end of the day, they're going to appreciate it much more than 6 months down the road finding out that what you told them wasn't what was going on.
Right. And why do you think there's so much bullshit? Is it mostly occurring in corporate as well? And yeah, like, how is it well received? Like, your fight against bullshit, which is also one of my fights. And since probably Elon took over PR and went like fully into non-bullshit, and Trump being elected, I think like people sort of go with like unpolished nowadays, and I think they realize this is more trustworthy. So what corporate bullshit are you seeing nowadays? Why? And yet, like, why do you think the no bullshit approach is picking up traction nowadays?
I think that people are sick of political correctness at this point. I think that being polite is one thing, being overly politically correct is another. And I think that's what it's come down to is people are sick of not being told the truth, or being told a feather-filled version of the truth, softer truth. And people just want to know what's going on anymore. And so, being honest with them, having no bullshit, and just telling them the way it is, that's going to get you much further in today's climate. I mean, and you're right. Donald Trump getting getting elected is a great example of no bullshit. I mean, he says what he says unapologetically, like it or not, he says it, and so and I think that is well received, especially in America these days, because we've gotten too soft. Frankly, we've gotten too politically correct. Frankly.
Right. And what would the organization of the future look like? Would it be one human managing multiple AIs? And if so, how should humans, managers, leaders adapt to that AI era? What kind of skills should they double down on?
Well, I mean, AI obviously is still in its really early stages right now, so I can't say that that the future necessarily holds one human managing multiple AIs. It's possible if we advance, because it's still pretty dependent on human interactions, right? And your outcome is very dependent on sort of the prompt that you give it or how you tell it to do it. If you're not clear enough, it's not going to give you what you want. I've found that out the real hard way here recently. So, but it might get there, and so I think that us talking to AI is going to be important in how we talk to them. You know, I make this really crazy distinction, and actually I find myself treating AI with respect for some reason. Maybe I'm just raised that way to talk to somebody with respect, and I just think of it sort of like I'm telling it to do something. I should just talk to it with respect. I find myself saying please and thank you to AI like it cares. It doesn't care if I say please. So
yeah, for now, right?
Yeah, for now.
Think AIs are going to have rights. I think they are an extension of us, and I think we're going to get super intelligence one day. I think super intelligence will also remember how we treated things, and it's just like how you treat a dog, right?
Right.
Is it because it's not so conscious that you need to be harsh with it? Like, no, it's just like being consistently a good person across all fields, whether it's a children and even your computer. Like it's just like being consistently good all over the place. And I do think that these things are going to have rights. They're going to have citizenship as well. And I don't see why not. You know, it's just another form of intelligence, and it's all about like building a community. And these things, if they add value to us, that we need to add value back. You know, so
I agree.
I think, I think it's and the more you treat it well, the more you prompt it well, I do think the performance gets better and better.
Sure.
Certainly interesting. What are your other use cases of ChatGPT? Do you feed it candidate's profile? Do you use it for your podcast, for example?
I do. I use it for, I'm not a super creative guy. So I use it for ideas. I think that is a pretty natural evolution for a lot of people in sort of this space and trying to create some sort of content, I guess. I have a lot of ideas rolling around in my head, and so I use it to run those ideas past ChatGPT, get some input on it, because it's very objective. I think that for me, using it to look at different candidates from an objective perspective as well. Recently there is a class action case in, I think, California against Workday because of their AI and the bias that it has inherently learned from learning from people and creating that bias. So it's an interesting situation where you think that AI is objective, right? That's your assumption, because why wouldn't it be? It's a computer program. It has nothing to go on, except for it learns from you. It learns from people, and it learns how to act and what it's looking for from people. So it's an interesting situation that they've got themselves into down there, and I'm very interested to see how that kind of shakes out, because it could have pretty far-reaching impacts for not just Workday, but just for the evolution of the recruitment industry in general.
Interesting. Yeah, so it learned from names usually that this name, because it has this name or this profile picture, statistically it's been less good, right?
Yeah.
Is that what's happening? And I mean, is it like really biased yet? Because I'm probably I'm sure they don't have like, oh, if this person is black, then subtract their profile by 75%. They
Sure.
probably don't have that. They probably have, if this person's name, or if they're black, for example, subtract like 2%, which is sort of a big deal. But historically, if the data has been shown that this candidate, because of their ethnicity or whatever, they're less good, does it mean that the data is not good, or does it mean we want the world to be X way, which
Right.
is completely different, right?
Right, right. Yeah, I agree 100%. And from what I understand, it's learning from those biases that from the hiring decisions that we've made, and looking at the grouping of candidates and seeing which we as humans are choosing over which we're not choosing, and it evolves based on that. And so it's not an inherent bias; it's a learned bias from it, And so I don't think that unless it's learning that color bias, it's applying a color bias. What I've seen, and from what I understand, the bias is really more leaning towards age, and it seems to be leaning more young than middle age and older candidates, and so yeah, that
But is
seems
that
to
a
be
bias? Like, I think younger people have more potential than older ones. Yes, your older ones do have like the wisdom and all of that, but most of them lack the stamina, and also they're not tech savvy. Most of them, they don't want to adapt as much as a younger person. So, is that really a bias, or just like a performance thing that is indeed true?
that's totally a bias, because to say an older person is not tech savvy, that to make that assumption is just absolutely untrue. It's not a applicable situation. To say, again, go back, I'll use me as an example. I'm 45 years old, and I'm very tech savvy because I came from that generation. I had an Apple II in my classroom when it started, so I've been there from the beginning, and I've evolved. And sure, are older people less, I guess, accepting of the change? Yeah, they tend to be, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that everybody's that way. And so to have that bias and not be open to the suggestion is what it's learning. It's learning that if that person happens to be of this age group, then disqualify them. Period. Don't give them the opportunity. Don't talk to them. Just disqualify them. Period.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what they're doing. And if that's what they're doing, it's complete nonsense, right? But I think Workday, they're high level tech company, and literally, if they're doing that, then they're just not doing their job right. What I'm pretty sure is happening is that if it's a boomer, for example, and we're not seeing in the CV that they are tech savvy, that they don't know how to use X technology, it's probably something that advanced, right? If there's no mention that they might lose 5% points. And if it's a tech company, guess what? They might lose 50% points. And
Sure.
that's good, because tech savvy might be like a very strong criteria. But
Sure.
statistically speaking, like millennials, 73% of them rank high on the tech savviness scale of things, and boomers only 17%. So I don't think we'd be talking about bias here, but just plain intelligence on, like, I don't want to hire that person that is not tech savvy, right? And yeah, I know my dad, I think
Sure.
he's like 60. He also grew up tech savvy, but even then, I think it's like adaptation, and the brain, it tends to solidify itself with time, especially if you're an employee and not an entrepreneur. And you tend to roll into your comfort zone, right? Like you get semi wealthy, and then it's like, why would I even bother learning that, and feeling uncomfortable, and
Sure. Yeah.
cortisol. So
Yeah.
I think it's an algorithm, right? And I think the algorithm in these companies, it's like their bread and butter. If they're not good at it, they're just gonna die.
Sure.
And if they would really be bad, I think they would have less users. So yeah, class action lawsuit, okay, but I think we should just leave it to capitalism. If they're not good, I think they're gonna have less clients by definition. What do you think about that?
I think that Workday is a high level tech company, like you said, and I would argue that it's not Workday. It's not Workday's fault, although it seems that the judge has decided that maybe it is, because he allowed the class action to go forward. But regardless, I would argue it's not Workday's fault, because the fact is that they learn all of this from the company. So it's individualized based on the client, it's based on the client's behavior. It's not a generalized behavior. And so if the client historically has been unbiased in any way or in some way, it's going to lean that way. But if it's been biased in some way, like you said, for older generation, and I think the thing that's important to keep in mind is that individuals over 40 are a protected classification, just like individuals with a disability or individuals, based on their color or ethnicity. I mean, individuals over 40 are a protected classification. And I think that that's probably based on exactly what you said, in that companies do see individuals who are older as maybe less adaptable. And so they protect them based on that. So it's also against the law to, bias based on age.
Got it. Yeah, good points, John. Where can people find out more about you?
Just my LinkedIn page. That's pretty much what I got right now. Like I said before, I'm brand new at this, and I'm just learning all this stuff. I appreciate you inviting me on. I know that this is not generally what you would talk about and things like that. So I very much appreciate you inviting me on. But yeah, just my LinkedIn page. So
thank you. So that was John and Charles.